he was restored and saw every man clearly. And he sent him away to his house, saying, neither go into the town, nor tell it to any in the town. Again, what we have here is the healing of an unnamed blind man. Mark is the only one who provides us with a record of this miracle. And again, in some ways, it's the most intriguing of all of Christ's miracles, just in the fact that it's so different than many of the others. And again, the miracles are instruments for teaching. They're basically parables in action, parables acted out, pictures of truth. And as we said earlier, the diseases, the infirmities, the conditions that are healed are symbolic of spiritual need. Christ never performed a miracle without purpose, without intent, and the time of the miracles, the place of the miracles, the manner in which he performed the miracles were all with intent and purpose. But the intent and purpose reaches beyond the specific time the miracles performed, reaches beyond the place, reaches beyond the individuals that were healed to you and I. They extend to you and I. Again, what is before us here can be viewed as a miracle in two stages, or you can look at it as two miracles. Either one would be so. In verse 24, we see the miracle of turning blind eyes into seeing eyes. I see men as trees walking. So this man was brought from the darkness of blindness to being able to see objects and to be able to see movement. And then in verse 25, you have the turning of seeing eyes into seeing more clearly. He saw every man clearly. Again, both present a spiritual need, and both present the Lord's sufficiency to meet the need. Now, it's not our purpose in this message to emphasize the miracle, but we want to emphasize the personal attention that the Lord gave to this man in his deficiency and in his need. So our subject this afternoon is the personal attention of the Lord to our spiritual needs. And again, this is of extreme importance that we place ourselves in what is before us and that we experience what is before us. We'll divide the message into two main parts. First of all, we have the blind man is brought to Christ. And then secondly, the personal attention of the Lord to this man. And again, this serves as instruction and encouragement to us. But first of all, let's look at the blind man that is brought to Christ. Notice verse 22. Notice in particular the words, a blind man. Notice unto him. They bring unto him. Notice besought. And notice touch. It is in these words that we see four matters that we need to apply to our individual lives. First of all, there was recognized need. Notice again the words, a blind man. A blind man. That speaks of a deficiency. That speaks of a need. Notice it is a blind man. Singular. So it is a personal and individual deficiency and need. Blindness is this man's root problem. Blindness is this man's deficiency. As a result of his blindness, he lived in darkness. Darkness was not the root problem. Blindness caused the darkness. So the root problem is blindness. As a result of his blindness, there were difficulties in his life. As a result of his blindness, there was a degree of confusion in his life. As a result of his blindness, there was some stumbling in his life. As a result of his blindness, there was some danger and there was some risk in his life. As a result of his blindness, his life was more vulnerable than someone who wasn't blind. As a result of his blindness, there would be fear, there would be apprehension that a seen man may not have. As a result of his blindness, his life was somewhat confined, somewhat limited. As a result of his blindness, he no doubt missed out on some things in life. But the darkness, the difficulties, the confusion, all the stumblings, the danger, the risk, the vulnerability, the confinement, and limitations, none of these are the problem. They are all symptomatic of his blindness. That's the root problem. That's a lesson that God's people need to learn over and over and over, because God's people deal with what's not even the problem. You need to get to the root problem. And none of these things were his real problem. But every one of them stemmed from the real problem. And the real problem was blindness. That's the real problem. His real deficiency is blindness. Again, a blind man. A blind man. This is a picture of need. And his need corresponds to his blindness. What is his need? Sight. That's his need. His problem is blindness. So what is the solution to blindness? Sight. See, once again, if you don't know the problem, you don't know the solution. And we have all these experts who don't know the problem. And they have no idea of the solution. So his need is sight. Now, there were people who brought this man to Christ. And the blind man, and those people who brought him to Christ, they knew he was blind. But the blind man himself knew he was blind. No one had to tell this man, do you know you're blind? He knew he was blind. He knew he had a deficiency. And he knew he had a need. Do we, as individuals, not speaking collectively, I'm speaking as individuals, do we as individuals recognize our spiritual deficiencies? It is very easy to see spiritual deficiency in others. I mean, you can see them 20 miles away. But do we recognize our own spiritual shortcomings? We all have them. We all have spiritual deficiencies. We all have spiritual shortcomings. Just as this man's blindness was very present and very real to this man, so you and I have very present and real spiritual deficiencies. You and I may not have the same spiritual deficiencies, but we all have them. We all have spiritual deficiencies. And I believe that we all will readily recognize the fact that as individuals we have spiritual deficiencies. And as a result of those spiritual deficiencies, we have spiritual needs. We all recognize that, whether we properly identify the deficiencies and the needs. That's another issue. But we're all probably aware of some personal spiritual deficiencies or needs. We hear the psalmist David confess in Psalm 40, verse 17, Psalm 70, verse 5, Psalm 86, verse 1, Psalm 109, verse 22. He says, I am poor and needy. He came to know, he came to understand, and he came to believe two things about himself. I am poor and I am needy. Poor is the problem there. Need results from the problem. I am poor and needy. And we can each of us say with David, in and of ourselves, we are poor and needy. In and of ourselves, we are defective. In and of ourselves, we are faulty, we're imperfect, we're deficient. In and of ourselves, we lack. In and of ourselves, we are weak. David is saying, no matter where I am, no matter what the situation, no matter what the circumstance, no matter the time, in and of myself, I am poor. And because I am poor, I am needy. I have a necessity. I have a need. We need to see our spiritual deficiencies as they are. And we need to be able to recognize the difference or distinguish between the root problem and what proceeds from the root problem or the symptoms of the root problem. And until we recognize the real problem, we don't recognize the real need. So remember when Jesus came to blind Bartimaeus. Now Bartimaeus was a blind beggar. But when Jesus asked him, what wilt thou that I do unto thee? What did Bartimaeus say? Oh, that I could have more money. I mean, he's a beggar. That wouldn't fix his problem. He said that I might receive my sight, because blindness was his problem. The other things were symptoms. They proceeded from the problem. So we need to identify personal and individual spiritual deficiencies in our life. So that's the first thing we see here, is there was a spiritual deficiency, and it was recognized. Secondly, there was belief that Christ was able to meet the deficiency and the need. Notice what it says. They bring a blind man unto him. Notice three words. Bring unto him. Bring unto him. Why did they bring unto him? Because they believed that he was able to fix the deficiency. That he was able to fix the deficiency of blindness. Again, we all have spiritual deficiencies. We all have needs resulting from those deficiencies. Do we believe, are we absolutely convinced that he is able to meet those deficiencies and needs? If so, bring whatever deficiencies you have, bring them to him. Bring them to him. That's what they did. He's willing. He's willing to address our deficiencies. And he is able to meet our deficiencies. Now, reading through the Gospels, we see Jesus giving sight to the blind. Sight was the need. Blindness was the problem. We see him giving hearing to the deaf. Hearing was the need. Deafness was the problem. We see Him giving relief to the infirm. Relief was the need. Infirmity was the problem. We see Him giving release to the demon-possessed. And this release or relief was the need. Possession was the problem. We see Him cleansing the defiled. Cleansing was the need. Defilement was the problem. But in all of those cases, Jesus is bigger than the problem. Amen. And in every one of those cases, He was what they needed. Every single time. And it's still the same today. Again, we all have spiritual deficiencies. We all have needs resulting from those deficiencies. And He is able, and He is the remedy to such. There is a great need for you and I as individuals to recognize our own spiritual deficiencies and bring them to Him. Bring them to Him. Quit trying to make excuses for your spiritual deficiencies. Bring them to Him. Recognize, I have this deficiency. He is bigger than the problem. He is bigger than the deficiency. He is able. I'm going to bring it to Him. No need to make an excuse. No need to cast blame. People spend their entire life blaming everyone else for their miserable life. Realize the deficiency. Quit blaming others and bring it to Him. Bring it to Christ. Quit trying to remedy it yourselves. Oh, we're good at this. We realize I have this spiritual deficiency. So starting today, I'm going to do better. Now, how's that working for you? It's very, very short-lived. Because you haven't addressed the problem. Whatever the problem is. We ought to try to do better. Don't misunderstand me. But trying to do better, trying to remedy the problem ourselves, is not going to fix it. We have to bring our deficiencies to Him. So we see, recognize our need, recognize our deficiency, believe that He is able to meet that deficiency. He's bigger than the problem. And bring it to Him. And then notice the third thing. And besought Him. And besought Him. They pleaded with Christ concerning this man's deficiency and need. And besought Him. That indicates that they had a desire to have the blindness eradicated. Again, every single one of us have very real and very present spiritual deficiencies. And from those deficiencies spring specific needs. But Christ is the remedy. And Christ is sufficient to meet the deficiency and the need. They bring a blind man unto Him and besought Him. And besought Him. Their beseeching was concerning the man's blindness. They are beseeching on behalf of this man's blindness. In their beseeching, there was an aspiration. There was a yearning. There was a longing concerning this man's deficiency. So again, personal examination is necessary. Do we know we have deficiencies. Do we desire? Do we long to be delivered from those spiritual deficiencies? Or are we content to live with them? Well, nobody's perfect. In other words, I'm just going to learn to live with it. and you're going to be miserable. And you're not going to be what you could be. Do we beseech the Lord concerning our deficiencies? They bring a blind man unto him and besought him. There was an eagerness for this man to be delivered from his blindness. Again, this needs to be a matter of personal examination. We all have spiritual deficiencies. How eager are we to be delivered from our own spiritual deficiencies? Here's what God's people do. Yes, I have this problem, but so-and-so, you think I got problems, they've got more than I got. Well, that's not going to fix your problem. You need to bring your problem to the Lord and beseech the Lord. They were eager. They had a desire. We desire many things from the Lord. But what is our degree of desire concerning deliverance from what we lack spiritually? What is our degree of desire concerning our being delivered from our spiritual deficiencies? Again, they brought a blind man unto him and besought him. In doing so, did they not realize that there was more for this man than blindness? There was something more for him than just blindness. And they realized that that something more was in Christ. And that's true of every one of us. We all have spiritual deficiencies. And there is something more for every single one of us. And it's in Christ. And He's the only one who can give it. They wanted more. They besought the Lord. They wanted more. They're pursuing more for this blind man. This, again, needs to be a matter of personal examination. Do I want more spiritually? Do I pursue for more spiritually? Again, we all have real and present spiritual lack. And there is something more for each one of us to possess. Whatever our spiritual condition at the moment, there's more for you and I to possess. Is there any one of us that cannot be more like Christ-like? Is there anyone here who cannot be more holy? Is there anyone here who could not know more spiritually? Is there anyone here who could not have more faith, more grace, more power, more peace, more joy, more assurance? There's more. There's more for each one of us. Can we not all be more submitted? Oh, I'm as submitted as I can be. You're foolish. We can all be more submitted. We can all be more yielded. We can all be more separated. We can all be less distracted by the world. We can all die more to sin and be more crucified to the world. We can all have a closer association, a warmer friendship with the Lord. We can all go beyond wherever we are in our prayer life, wherever we are in our church life. We can all go beyond wherever our personal relationship with others is. There's more. There's always more. We can all have greater esteem of Christ. We can all have a deeper sense of His presence. And we can all have a greater experience of the Lord. We can worship the Lord in a more pleasing way. We can praise Him more. We can thank Him more. We can be more sensitive to Him. We can follow Him more fully. Our lives can be in a more manifest way show forth Jesus Christ and reflect Jesus Christ and manifest the Lord. And we can all be more impacted by the Lord. And we can all be more influenced by His Word, prevailing in our hearts and memories and wills. My point is, there's more spiritually for every one of us. The question is, that's not the question, is there more for us spiritually? Yes, there is. The question is, are we eager for it? The question is, do we want it? They brought the blind man to Christ and beseeched him. They wanted something more than blindness and darkness for this man. We need to properly identify our spiritual deficiency. We need to take that deficiency to the Lord knowing that He is able. And we do so with a desire and a longing and an eagerness to be delivered from such, and we plead, Lord, deliver me from this deficiency. I have this deficiency in my life. Deliver me. You say, well, I know I have deficiencies, but I'm not sure what they are. Ask the Lord, He'll tell you. Ask the Lord to show you. He can do that. The fourth thing concerning bringing him to Christ, there was a desire for Christ to do something specific concerning the deficiency. We're real good about praying in generalities. Notice they besought him to touch him. Something specific. They besought him to touch him. They desired that Christ exert His power upon this man's blindness. We know we have deficiencies. Hopefully we can identify some of those deficiencies. Bring them to Christ, desiring to be delivered from them, and asking very specifically for the Lord to exert His power on my deficiency. My deficiency. Oh, we're good about bringing other people's deficiencies to the Lord and asking the Lord to manifest His power and deliver them from their deficiency. Well, there's nothing wrong with that, but it's kind of hypocritical if you don't pray that concerning yourself, concerning your own spiritual deficiencies. So again, we have spiritual deficiencies, we have spiritual needs proceeding from them, resulting from them. And may I say that our deficiencies are greater and more numerous than any of us realize. And I'm afraid that though we realize that we have spiritual deficiencies, there are times that we're guilty of not really wanting the Lord to deal with them, but we rather just tend to them ourselves or learn to live with them. Oh, that we would not learn to live with spiritual deficiencies. We read in Isaiah 59:1, Behold, the Lord's hand is not shortened that it cannot save. The Lord's hand is not shortened that it cannot deal with my or your spiritual deficiencies. There is still the enabling, healing, transforming touch of the Lord. The question is, do we desire for the Lord to personally, they said, touch Him, to personally do something to us regarding our spiritual deficiency and needs? Do we desire the personal attention of the Lord? Through my ministry, I have observed that most people try to avoid the personal attention of the Lord. Do we desire the personal attention of the Lord regarding our spiritual deficiencies and the needs proceeding from them? Again, they bring a blind man, that's the deficiency, unto Him, that's the remedy, and besought Him They have a desire and a longing to touch Him. Something very specific regarding the deficiency. So do we feel our spiritual deficiencies? Do we feel them enough to bring them unto Him, believing that He is able to remedy whatever the deficiency might be, and desiring Him to intervene concerning our own spiritual lack? When they beseech the Lord to touch this blind man, they are asking God to intervene in this man's life concerning his blindness. When was the last time you asked the Lord, Lord, I have this deficiency. I've tried and tried and tried, but it's still there. Lord, I'm asking you to personally intervene regarding my deficiency. Many of God's people, because of what they've been taught, say, oh, I'd be scared to ask that. You have a wrong concept of God. He's your Father. Amen. He loves you and cares for you. Amen. Don't be afraid to ask the Lord to intervene regarding your spiritual deficiency. That brings us to the second main point, and that is the personal attention of the Lord to this man. Notice verse 23. And He, Jesus, notice that word took. Took the blind man. Well, if He took the blind man, He took the man in his blindness. How did He take him? By the hand. What a picture. This blind man knew that he was blind. This blind man could hear the ones who had brought him to Christ. He could hear them pleading on his behalf that Jesus would touch him. This blind man, no doubt, knows that Jesus was there. He knows this. He had a knowledge of his own deficiency. And he has a knowledge of Christ's presence. We need to get there. We need to be in the place where we know our deficiency. And we need to know that Jesus is there. We need to be painfully aware of our deficiencies. And we need to be aware Jesus is here. Notice, He took him by the hand. Now this blind man has moved beyond knowing that Jesus is there. He now feels His presence. There's a big difference. You can know God's presence, but feeling His presence is something that's an entirely different level. When He took this man by the hand, he felt the presence of Jesus Christ. So here he is in his blindness, in his deficiency. He knows Christ is there, and now he feels His presence. That needs to be us. Again, it's wonderful to know the truth of God's omnipresence. Everyone here believes in the omnipresence of God. But I guarantee you that not everyone here personally feels the presence of the Lord. Big difference. You can't feel His presence. You can know He's present in a mental sort of way and not be impacted you can't feel His presence without being impacted. The Lord took him by the hand. He was personally brought to feel the Lord's presence. So we need to pray, Lord, I have this deficiency. I know You're here, and I know You're the remedy for my deficiency. Lord, I need to feel Your presence. I need to feel Your presence. A lot of Baptists want to eliminate feelings. Well, that's a huge mistake. It's very erroneous. The day the Lord saved me, I felt something. And I've felt His presence ever since. Nothing wrong with feelings. Just don't confuse feelings with fact. And He took the blind man by the hand. He did so. Again, Jesus took. You do that on purpose. If you take somebody by the hand, you do that on purpose. And you have an intent in doing so. He took the blind man. Why didn't it just say He took him? He took the blind man. He took this man and all of his limitations and all of his deficiencies. And He took him by the hand. So now we see this picture. You have this man, he's blind. And Christ and this man are hand in hand. That's a good place to be. That needs to be us. Amen. Jesus, in mercy, in grace, in love and kindness, reached forth His mighty hand and took this man's hand. What a wonderful picture. There's personal attention from the Lord to this man. There is personal contact from the Lord to this man. And it's this man in his deficiency. He's still blind. Oh, how wonderful. In our deficiencies when the Lord comes and takes us by the hand. And that's what we have here. So again, do we desire for the Lord to pay personal attention to us, not merely concerning our material needs? Oh, we don't mind that. We don't mind the Lord paying close attention to us when it comes to material needs. But are we desirous of the Lord to pay personal attention to us concerning our spiritual deficiencies? Notice verse 23. And He took the blind man by the hand. Again, He does that on purpose and with intent. His intent is, and led him out of the town. Notice it says, led him. It does not say, and He took the blind man by the hand and dragged him out of the town. It's not what it says. It says He led him out of the town. Out of the town of Bethsaida. So this man, in his blindness, knows the presence of the Lord, feels the presence of the Lord, but now he feels something else. He feels himself being led away by Christ. Oh, what a feeling. It's one thing when the Lord takes us by the hand, but then when we feel Him carrying us away. And that's what this man now feels. He doesn't know where he's going. He has no idea. He's blind. But he knows this, he's going with Christ. So what difference does it make where you're going? If you're going with Him. So he now feels himself being carried away, led away by Christ. And Christ does so with a very definite purpose in mind. And it has to do with this man's deficiency. Thank God for His love, His gentleness in dealing with our spiritual deficiencies. That's what He's doing here with this man. Took him by the hand, and He's going to deal in love and gentleness with this man's deficiency. Again, personal examination is needed. Do we desire for the Lord to come and take us by the hand and lead us to the place where He will deal with our spiritual deficiency? Oh, the power of Christ leading us away. Every one of us needs that right now. Just Christ leading us away. Next thing we read, verse 23. So He's led this man out of town. Jesus spit on his eyes, put His hands upon him. Again from verse 25, we see He put His hands upon his eyes. What's He doing? He's touching the point of the deficiency. Why didn't Christ just put His hands upon the man's feet? Why didn't He put them on his shoulders? Because the shoulders weren't the problem. The problem was his eyes. So the Lord put His hands upon his eyes. He's touching the point of his deficiency. Again, by way of personal examination, do we desire for the Lord to lay His hands directly upon the point of our spiritual deficiency? Lord, I have this deficiency. Oh, that we would feel His presence, that we would feel ourselves being led away by Him, and that we would feel His hands touching the point of our deficiency. That's what we need. That's what we need. This is the personal touch of the Lord. And this personal touch of the Lord was followed by a question. He, Jesus, asked him if he saw aught. He asked him a very personal question. And it's in regards to what? His deficiency and his need. Again, personal examinations necessary. Are we desirous of the Lord to ask us questions that address our spiritual deficiencies and needs? Do we want that? Do we want the Lord to come to us and address our deficiencies? In verse 24, we see the man's answer. And he looked up and said, I see men as trees walking. See what's going on here. The Lord asked him the question. He responds, I see men as trees walking. He was honest with the Lord about a particular deficiency. I see men as trees walking. He's saying, Lord, it's better, but I still got a problem. He was honest. Again, personal examination is needed. Are we willing to be honest with the Lord? It's amazing how much we lie to God. He knows. Need to be honest with the Lord, whatever the deficiency, realizing the danger of any deficiency. Again, verse 25, after that, after what? The man's admission of his deficiency. He put his hands, plural, again Again, thank God for his again. Upon his eyes and made him look up. What a beautiful picture of the Lord personally dealing with this man's deficiency. You know, when the Lord asked him, "Do you see aught?" he could have thought in his mind, well, you know, I see men as trees walking, but that's better than darkness. So yeah, everything's fine, Lord. Everything's fine. And he would have continued in life seeing men as trees walking. Don't tell the Lord everything's fine when it isn't. When it isn't. Be honest. Be honest. Lord, I have this deficiency. It's still there. The result of the Lord dealing with this man, and he was restored. We ought to desire to be personally restored. Again, this man was not blind from birth, because he'd obviously seen men and he'd obviously seen trees. He became blind. We can become spiritually blind. Restoration is needed. And how does it come? By the Lord's touch. By the Lord personally intervening in our life. He was restored. As a result, he saw every man clearly. That's the result of the restoration. Again, there's now a new beauty in his life. It's been restored. How many of God's people, you go back to the day the Lord saved your soul. You go back to the days when the Lord revived your spirit. There was a beauty in your life. Is it still there? Is it still there? If not, there's a problem. Well, you know, brother so-and-so did this and sister so. Quit making excuses. That's not the issue. That's not the problem. Well, that pastor, that's not the problem. If your life has lost its beauty, it's because you have a problem. And that problem needs to be addressed. Whatever it is. Whatever has caused it. But the cause is you and I, not someone else. Beauty can be restored, but only by Him. So again, we need to ask the Lord to personally intervene in our lives and to deal personally with us. The Lord took this man by the hand and led him away. Recognize your spiritual deficiency. Pray that God would come personally to you, take you by the hand, and lead you away. And then begin a work upon you. He touched his eye. He spit. He touched his eyes. This is what we need. For the Lord to deal with our spiritual deficiencies on a personal level. Oh, the desire that we ought to have for that to take place. Again, make no mistake about it. We have spiritual deficiencies. And they're more than we even know. We need to identify the ones we do know. And I'll tell you what, once you identify the ones you do know, the ones you don't know show up too. It just kind of works that way. But it's an absolute necessity if we're going to serve the Lord in these days in which we live. We need to recognize spiritual deficiencies. Again, it's easy to see them in everyone else, but everyone else isn't your problem. You need to deal with yourself. And you can talk about someone else's deficiencies, and you can talk about your own deficiencies, but talk won't cause the problem to go away. You need to bring them to the Lord and ask God to personally intervene in our own lives, leading us, taking us by the hand, and carrying us away to deal with us on a personal level. Lord Dave, if you'd come and lead us verse song. Let's all stand. Lord Dave will lead us in singing.